about the response to the story at all. They just, initial story, it's over and out. It's something that concerns Ken Blackwell, which is an individual I've been keeping a good eye on for a while.
What do you think about Ken Blackwell?
Where do you
What are your
start?
observations?
Wow. I find him to be very shallow, and I find him to be very arrogant. I think here's a candidate who's running for governor whose positions are flimsy. I mean, he's primarily run on gay marriage. And you know, the other big thing that he had going for him was the Tell-Tabor, you know, the tax spending limitation, which is essentially a one-size-all-fits gimmick. It doesn't really tackle the problems of the state. It doesn't really say, well, how are we going to pay for this? How are we going to pay for that? It's just an election gimmick. That's really all it is. And it got shot out of the water. He doesn't really have anything to back it up. It was a few weeks ago, probably in response to the fact that Ted Strickland's main tenet is, what do we do about education? I think he felt he had to come up with an education plan, so he comes up with another one-size-fits-all gimmick, that 65% plan. Yeah, that gets shot out of the water with an editorial by Rod Page in the New York Times. Again, it's just a flimsy solution. You got the feeling that he spent 5 minutes going, okay, what other ideas are out there? Oh, this sounds good. This wouldn't cost us anything. Let's do this. I don't think he's ever come up with any position on health care, which is a drastic need in this state. I mean, more and more people are losing their health care every day. We have a state that has some of the finest health care facilities in the country that can be accessed by Saudi Arabian sheiks, but not by people in the state of Ohio. Blackwell has no plans at all to address that. His only real plan seems to be, we gotta find new rights to deprive gay people of. That to me is a shallow candidate. That's not a candidate that says, okay, we here in the state, we have one of the highest rates of bankruptcy, we have one of the highest rates of mortgage foreclosure, we have one of the lowest numbers of business starts, one of the highest rates of job loss, we have one of the lowest rates of job creation. How do we turn this around for just the average working stiff who just wants a job and wants to take care of his family? It's like Blackwell hasn't even thought about that, is the feeling I get. And the other thing is just his damn arrogance. I mean, every time somebody says, okay, your 65% plan doesn't really look like it would work. He has sends out, Carlo Lapero, to say, oh, that's just partisan politics because they know that, Ken Blackwell is going to get, all the votes in the urban community. And they've got Democrats believing it. I mean, I'm tired of speaking to people who always going to get 50% of the black vote. He is not going to get 50% of the black vote.
It shocked me to no end that happened.
The only poll I've seen so far showed him maybe polling 20%. And that I could believe. He's not going to get 50%. And I think this has just been his standard modus operandi. I mean, if you look back to the election of November 2004, he issued a press release after that election where he specifically said, I still have it, he said the election ran smoothly and every single person that wanted to vote got to vote. That's almost like mocking those people who stood in line for 3, 4, 5 hours, then had to leave to go to their jobs. I mean, a normal Secretary of State, even a corrupt one, would have said, overall, we thought we did a good job. We understand there's some problems and we're working on fixing them so that by the next election, everybody should be happy. And then go ha 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 back on your own. But to say that in public, that every single person who wanted to vote got to vote, it's just a lie. And then you went to court, to have to avoid answering questions from citizens about the election. This is his job. He's Secretary of State.
Is this the kind of stuff that 3 times we'll be talking more about?
I think so. And we have in the past. I mean, I did 2 stories last year on Blackwell. One was specifically on the issue before he declared as a candidate. And this is something now the papers are starting to talk about. But I actually did a piece on it well over a year ago, on the issue of him running his own election. And he wasn't a declared candidate at the time, but everybody was saying he is going to be. So I said, well, gosh, I wonder if he would oversee his own election. And I talked to his office, and yeah, there's no reason for him to withdraw. And I said, well, I wonder if it's ever been an issue before. And I looked into it, and I found that both Sherrod Brown and Bob Taft, I guess somebody earlier, but those two were the last two Secretary of State, that they had both overseen their own elections. So I talked to people who had knowledge of those campaigns and said, was this ever a problem? I talked to Lee Fisher, who ran against Bob Taft. He said, no, Taft just ran the office. It was just strictly an administrative thing with him. I don't think he would have ever thought of using it to, fix the election for himself. So I printed this, and that this was a new thing, that Blackwell had taken the office of Secretary of State someplace it had never been before, because nobody ever raised any doubts about the way Sherrod Brown or Bob Taft ran the office. The other thing that I'm really, really proud of is that I was the first person to print anything in the media anywhere other than on one obscure blog, which I should give credit because this is where I got tipped off. This is the blog, Hypothetically Speaking, about the fact that Ken Blackwell is essentially a Siamese triplet with the Reverends Russell Johnson and Rod Parsley. Rod Parsley, about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, published a book called Silent No More, as if he ever was silent. Among the things in it was an absolutely hair-raising piece of hate speech called The Truth About Allah. He also delivered this as a sermon in his church, the World Harvest Church, back in May 1st, 2005. And he essentially says that, he does say that Islam is a demonic religion, that Muhammad was not speaking to angels, he was speaking to minions of Satan, that all the violence in the history of the world has essentially been created by Islam, and that every war that America has ever fought in its history has been to keep Islam away from its shores. I don't know where he studied history, but this is all right there in his book. I actually went into a Christian bookstore and bought this book and read it. I mean, he says that the goal of Islam, he doesn't distinguish between a small group of extremists, just all Islam, is to wipe out Christianity and take over the world.
Do you think we'll be seeing this on the Blackwell campaign website anytime
Well,
soon?
at the same time, it was really interesting because this is what sort of really triggered me to do something about it. Every time there's a major black event, Louis Farrakhan is involved, there's always Jewish groups that jump up and say, oh, Farrakhan said all these anti-Jewish things, all the black groups should repudiate him. Forget the fact that it was years ago and they're not dealing with him on those issues and whatever. So I thought, okay, these groups are always demanding that black groups repudiate Farrakhan. I wonder if Blackwell stands with or against Rod Parsley on being anti-Islam. Because, you know how close he is with Rod Parsley. Not only that, but this book was dedicated to Ken Blackwell, and Ken Blackwell did a cover blurb on the back cover.
Interesting.
You don't get much closer than that. So I called the Secretary of State's office because he was not yet a candidate at that point, and I spoke to Carlo Lopero, and I said, I just was reading Rod Parsley's book, and in this book he's got an entire chapter that essentially rips the entire religion of Islam from stem to stern, and I know that he and Blackwell are closely affiliated. Can you tell me if Blackwell stands behind these remarks or if he repudiates them? And Lopero gave me the runaround. Of course, not surprisingly, he said, I don't know about these. I'll have to ask him to get back to you. But in the meantime, I'll send you a speech that he delivered to an Arab American group. He sent me some boilerplate speech that Blackwell made right after 9/11. So I wrote this up and just made people aware that this is what Blackwell has not repudiated. And to say he's never repudiated those remarks. He never has said, I think Rod Parsley was way out of line. And you're never going to hear him say that. So as of right now, Ken Blackwell is connected with these hair-raisingly horrifying anti-Islamic remarks. Hate speech, basically. So,
Until he says otherwise.
what? Until he
Until-
says
right.
otherwise. Because he has never at any point distanced himself from Ron Parsley.
Right? No, not even close.
No, I mean, Parsley and Johnson, I mean, as far as I know, are still among his biggest supporters.
Good stuff. Anastasia, thank you.
Thank you.
Free Times is the newspaper. What's the website? Free Times.
It's freetimes.com.
Freetimes.com.
Yeah,
Check it
read
out.
We've got a bunch of great writers. Lots of good stuff.
Thank you.